So I wanted to read just this tiny little paragraph, but this is where the status quo is screwing up European history. Because of the biblical stuff that they could not shake when they did a lot of this work, or that they were forced to include, we have an erroneous take. And it's this slight adjustment that even if there were some sort of hidden history laid up in this, it would make sense, right? So like the status quo will say that like the Pelagi or Pelagios, meaning the wanderers by sea. I don't know if that's named after the stork or if the stork is named after them, Pelagios, but it's there. But in this this desperate need to infuse this with Abrahamic fantasy is what is throwing everybody off. And so just this in this article, it's an essay from the 1700s, over 100 years before the Orlinda. And the reason I sent it to Chance is because it talks about how the Saxons' letters were developed by straight lines and circles. And that's exactly the system that the Orlinda uses. But Pelagi appears to be, this writer wrote, Pelagi appears to be a general name for those migrators who divided and migrated in obedience to the divine command, fill the earth. And basically it says from their, afterwards they acquired different names from their different settlements, vis-a-vis, or namely the Celts in the west and southwest, the Scythians in the north and northwest, the Phrygians, right? Lacedaemonians and Trojans in the central part of the globe. And Eustathius, the commentator on Homer, called the Pelasgians divine because they only preserved the letters. And Dionysius Halicarnassus mentions an inscription on a pillar in the temple of Diana at Rome, remaining in this time in Latin letters of the same forms as the Greek anciently used. But the point I'm showing you is that if you just correct it, like he cites Dionysius Halicarnassus, who wrote the Pelasgians and Turanians were called the same by people all over the world. So that's as good as admitting the Turanians. If everybody wants to look up where the Turanian Sea is, it's the west coast of Italy. And so Herodotus, all these people used erroneous etymology that's been debunked by modern Etruscologists, saying that like the Etruscans are from Lydia and whatever. They tried to put this Greek or this Oriental stamp on the Pelagi, on the Phoenicians, on the Italians, and their language is not Indo-European. So these Scythians, these Pelagians, these Celts, they're not coming from the Orient. They're coming exactly from where language, archaeology, and everything else shows you that they're coming from, Italy. That is the Central European phenotype. It's indigenous, and everything else of European culture is their diaspora. That's why you don't have places in Scandinavia known as far back as the 2nd century BC. Everything north of the Black Sea, they didn't know. And they said that people who write about that are thought to lay down fables. Now, the only thing is, I'm not saying people weren't there, but it was much like what the Phoenicians did with Britain, keeping Britain secret for thousands of years. So what? They could mine that tin and monopolize the Bronze Age, right? Well, have you ever looked at the price of an amber figurine? It was worth more than a healthy slave's life. And where is the amber in Etruria coming from? It's coming from the Nordic lands. So they were up there, but they were up there. It wasn't like colonized. It was up there mining and keeping amber nice and expensive. And the way they looked, that isn't set in stone because even the Etruscan amber hasn't been quote unquote scientifically or chemically analyzed. It just has things in it that's consistent with amber from like the Baltic region versus amber from Sicily that doesn't have those components. So that's why they suspect that it's from the Nordic lands, but it hasn't been proven yet. But that's where I'm gathering a lot of this stuff happened. It's because they were mining the amber, and amber was a hot commodity back then.